Until recently, all but your biggest customers had to submit to your invoicing process. Well, now, even your smallest customers demand an invoicing and payment experience that works for them. That is customer-centric AR. Our behavior as consumers is driving our expectations at work. When was the last time you wrote a personal check? We evolved a long time ago and found new ways to pay. The paper workforce is almost completely turned over, and millennials have entered the workforce en masse. It's time to shift your focus from repetitive, low-value, non-scalable, reactive activities to seeing what's actually important. The customer. Make your customers happy to pay you. That is customer-centric AR.
Please welcome our last speaker of the day, Joe Little, a Power Platform Program Manager. Today, he will be presenting using Power BI to create financial reports for Business Central. Please stick around after Joe's session for a live Q&A.
My name is Joe Little, and this session is using Power BI to create financial reports in Business Central. It's a technical session. It's brought to us by Dynamics Con. Big thanks to Dynamics Con for bringing us this event. Please remember to put your questions into the conference chat during the session or after the session. The session will go on for 40 minutes filmed, and then we'll have a 20-minute live Q&A where we will talk back and forth. But in the meantime, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Other people can see them, and we like to see them. All right, well, we've got a lot to cover, so let's get going. This is a technical session that's based on accounting and technical fundamentals. We'll cover off scope, then level set on some key fundamentals for accounting and for analytics. We'll review our considerations. We'll discuss what we did about them in terms of who, what, where, when, and how, as they affect the why or why not regarding the question that this session is meant to speak to, i.e., is Power BI a reasonable platform to support financial reporting for Microsoft Business Central users? We'll start off with a Power BI demo around minute 15, and we'll cover the reports that we created, what they look like, how we ran, how to run them, and so on. We'll cover our results. We will cover filtering and running reports, creating new reports, data models and queries, and then we'll talk about what standard and custom hierarchies are, and reporting trees, and how you might set those up. We'll get into a live Q&A session that will last approximately 10 minutes. And as we go, please remember we'll have the chat window open. So chat, people will be watching that, and we'll take questions all throughout the episode and at the end. So thank you all. Let's get going. Our scope is Power BI, but that can mean a few things. There are 3 versions of Power BI, including a free community version and a paid professional and premium version that you see here. The community version allows you to do pretty much everything that you can imagine with Power BI, as long as you do it alone. When you want to share your work with colleagues or otherwise introduce it into the business world, you need the professional version, which gives you access to the shared Power BI workspaces on powerbi.com, and from there, there's actually quite a lot going on. The premium version is much more expensive because it includes dedicated hardware and the services necessary to support commercial business intelligence. The price tag may seem expensive, but when you line item it out and compare it to the equivalent hardware, software, and services, it's really not a bad deal. The best part is you don't buy until you need it, and it's leased so there's less risk. And whatever assets you invest in creating now will work on the day you turn up the power if that happens. So this is Power BI, the professional version, $9.99 a month. That's the one that we have in scope. The session does have in its description some comments um, about not being able to paginate and run paginated reports. In the Power BI Premium version, that actually isn't so. It does cover that. So this is Power BI Pro. I don't advise on accounting, but I wanted to cover off a couple of important fundamentals. A good friend of mine gave me this book. It was released in now, most tax jurisdictions have a pretty similar set of requirements because it allows audit systems to function. But what happens if all your records are lost, right? Well, the answer to that question is actually pretty simple. You just ask the folks that you do business with. They have the other half of every transaction, and that's what happens in an audit, regardless of the state of your financials. There is a correct answer, which the taxing authorities can identify. So accounting is dependent on algebra, but the roots of the structure are actually geometry. It's simple, which makes it hard to cheat, and it's been used for tax for a very long time. It is, in essence, a series of two-ticket systems. The chart of accounts serves as the primary category. Other dimensions like source type, vendor, employee, activity type, buy, sell, adjust, and the date when the transaction was booked are also quite common. Analytics is entirely based on algebra, and it's the process of making specific questions easier to answer by keeping categorized lists, sometimes called indexes, and or otherwise duplicating data. And we duplicate data a lot. It's a space for time trade-off, but that's the core trick of business essentials. So here's a sample question. Is there exactly one stub for every ticket in the image above, right? The two things, these two ways of looking at things come together in financial reporting. So if you're new to this, the key takeaway to help you understand is that um, uh, most financial reports can be created with categorization by assigning it to the GL accounts. And so we can use account categories and dimensions and other things. But traditional financial statements, some of them are built up from non-symmetric categories. We call these ragged hierarchies in business intelligence. And they're built up by building out all of the subcategories, all the items that are part of those groups. So in this is not kept in the data and can't be kept on the accounts. And in Business Central, we have a place where we call there's something called account schedules that maintains this relationship. And in Great Plains, reporting historically has used trees for this sort of thing. Well, analytics uses facts like terms like facts, measures, and dimensions to describe the nature and the location of the numbers that we're counting and the categorization of how we want to count them. Right. So this is our sort of level set from both a computer point of view for the accounting folks and an accounting point of view for the computer folks. I hope I haven't stepped on any toes, and I hope it's useful. So we'll need it in a few. All right, so let's talk about considerations. When we thought about this, we thought about the kind of who, what, where, when, standard stuff. And we thought about our audience being a mix of folks who are in Business Central, subscribing there, and folks that aren't. A lot of managers and others aren't, but everybody in this scenario would have to be a Power BI, professional user. And then there are different kinds of folks, depending on what they do, different types of reports are more interesting to them. So to get to the what, well, we kind of stuck a list into Teams and revised it a couple of times and picked some of our favorite suspects. And this is our short list of things that, you'd want to see in a representative minimal sample report set. So when we thought about where, Power BI workspaces are the where that we have in mind in this, today that we'll be demoing. Uh, they are places to collaborate with colleagues, create collections of dashboards and the other assets and so on. They they work really well with teams. The teams hold the artifacts, the Power BI workspaces, then assets shared to them are owned by the team. So it's a good place. Um, does it refresh, etc., often enough, i.e. when? Uh, well, the when category you have to kind of break down from, uh, depends on the data source. So web services are how we get information out of Business Central. They can be published in a Business Central client. They are published for one company or for all companies, but each company has its own separate web service URLs. Uh, there is one company per connection. They connect over pages or services, and uh, that type of connection Power BI can connect to, and under a professional license can get to it 8 times a day. But there are other things that you can do with Power BI data sets, data flows. Let's take a look at these reports. We'll take a look at what we've got done. This that we're looking at is just a screenshot, but it'll open us up to the Power BI dashboard. And we put the Power BI dashboard in an app, which is something you can do from the Power BI workspace because it has a little nicer, shows a little nicer when you're presenting. So this is, it starts off on a Get Started page, and the Get Started page shows us quickly how to get started, but it also serves as a place where there is no reporting load, right? If we started on a report, then you get a little slower start speed because it's calculating. So we do that for a couple of reasons, but the README gives us a basic idea that we can open this and say file print and get a PDF. And so let's just start off and see if that's true. These are some of our reports on the left. We will start with the balance sheet, and we can go ahead and just say file, print. This is a PDF. We'll save it to PDF in sample reports, and we'll just call it balance sheet. See if we can get that open here. This is now just a PDF file, which can be opened with any PDF editor, and it's pretty easy to transport. Let's take a look at the reports. The balance sheet indicates everything that a company owes or is owed for the reporting period. We can look at the balance sheet here, and we see the typical beginning balance, debit amount, credit amount, and ending balance for the period. Basically, this report is a grouping of financial categories on the on the balance sheet, with one exception, which is the retained earnings, which retained earnings is the retained earnings for the current year is the sum of the income statement amounts, and that's what makes the balance sheet balance to zero. So assets offset liabilities and equity, but part of that equity is retained earnings. So this kind of a report, this is a sort of financial balance sheet type of report that an accountant might want to do, but it requires a little more trickery around the edges to make work than just a simple analytics by dimension. But this is our balance sheet. If we take a look, we can see income statement here, and we have an income statement, and here we have the current fiscal period. We have a little bit of a comparative. There are different variants on this, and one of the things you can do with Power BI is use bookmarks. So if we show some of the bookmarks that we have here, we'll open it up a little bit so we can see. We've got the income statement forgive me, we've got the income statement, just regular old income statement. We are running it for the quarter. So if we were to want to rerun it or filter it, we could do so by taking a look at the filters. These are our filters. So if we wanted to change the fiscal period, for example, that would update. We can print. So this is how we change our filters. Some of these filters are available to users. Some of these filters we set with the reports, and we can see a little lock on them when we, don't allow them to be changed. So this is, we'll go ahead and set it to the whole quarter again. Um, we have a different bookmark here, different way of looking at this because we're looking at what is owed and earned in a time period. Comparisons are useful. So we have the couple of versions of that. Prior period comparative compares to prior period. And this is really just the income statement, but we're changing around with bookmarks, changing the filters on this. So um, uh, making the, we'll show you in a little bit how that works. Um, so prior period, prior year. We can also look at income statement on a year-to-date basis, and that's a common thing to do. We also look at income year-to-date on a comparative basis. How are we doing versus last year, so on and so forth. Uh, Also on our list was a budget, just budgets, budget to actual. We have a couple of bookmarks here for budget to actual for revenues and expenses. And I think year to date and some other patterns here. And the last one that we have here is a cash flow statement. And a cash flow statement can contain a sort of complex group of groupings, a complex set of groupings. Um, and so what it indicates is the, the net income. It makes adjustments for things that actually didn't hit cash and gives you an idea of what the cash flow in and out of the business for a period of time was. So in this, um, we have a bunch of largely categories. If we are to filter up and down on this, we start with this. We'd like to see the accounts and we'd like to see the details because it's a little bit otherwise difficult to check. So one of the things we can do, we've got drill through, so we can look at the transaction or schedule details, see the transactions behind there. So it was one of the choices we made to make sure that we really knew what the numbers meant that we were looking at here. Uh, so this cash flow, basically, if we look at it from a high level, what we're doing is grouping operating expenses with net income, working off any adjustments, uh, bring in other income from investing activities to give us our total cash flow for the period. And so that's some of the things we can do when we run reports. So now let's go over and look at the Power BI desktop client for how to build and edit and change these reports and what we did. Power BI desktop client is where you create and edit reports. When we publish, we start with this README page so that folks will land on it when they open it for the first time. That's what controls that. It generally shouldn't have anything on it except for some tiny piece of control to keep the no control, screen from coming in. This, right? So we put some little piece of text or something on there to make sure that doesn't show up. Otherwise, it's empty. All right, so when we look at these reports, if we take a look at the balance sheet, I'm going to assume some level of Power BI knowledge, but I'll try to go slowly. There are three main areas here. This is the report pane where we create reports and visualizations. There is an area here for data that looks a little bit like Excel. It's where the tables and other things appear. And then there's an area where our model is shown, where we can see the relationships of different tables within the data model. So we have these three main areas. We'll go over to the reporting pane. And when we look at the balance sheet, this is the visual kind of way we're looking at things. So when we looked at filters and that sort of thing, they appeared there because we put them on this pane here when we built the report. The visualizations that are used on these are primarily just matrix, right? It's row, column, and they have the ability to expand and collapse. So we don't see the expanders and expand collapse buttons on here because they print better without them. So to change them, this is what we do. They are a property over here, and the properties are most easily searched. And if we turn on our expansion icons, we can start to see that this is really a hierarchy. That's what we're working with here. It is a hierarchy of balance sheet or income statement. If we look at the very top, this is all balance sheet because this is a balance sheet report. Then we have our categories, subcategories, groups, the accounts that happen to be within those groups, and then the transactions that drill through to the detail that fulfill that. Right? So from the balance sheet point of view, we use balance beginning, debit amount, credit amount, and ending balance. So now let's take a look at the different fields and hierarchies and options we have for making reports by making a report. So we'll just start by creating a new empty visual area. This is what it looks like in Power BI when we do that. We have a couple of options here. There are, let's take a look at our model here. So we have budget amounts, variance, and amounts. So we have our basic financial, our basic entries here that we can use across all of our schedules and categories. We also have categories that control the hierarchies of the categories. So if we usually would start with some kind of a category hierarchy. Now this is the category hierarchy that comes out of Business Central that's set up when you put the account category and subcategory codes on the general ledger accounts. So if we take this, so we turn it into um, a matrix visualization, we can start to see how that works, and it starts to just expand out down to the bottom of the categories. That's our category hierarchy. So if we're going to use that, which we can use without setting anything up, we could add an account description, for example, which would then, see if we can get that in there. And if we drill another level down, we can see that. Across, we can use date hierarchies. The dates have calendar hierarchies, and they also have fiscal period hierarchies. So the difference is has to do with when you set up your fiscal period. So if we put this fiscal period in as columns, we can start to see rows for the accounts. And I see some blank ones here, so I not sure what I got there. Rows and columns. And then we'll need a value here. So we can use an amount, year-to-date amount, beginning ending balance, credit, debit, budget, that sort of thing. So we'll start just with an amount, just to keep it easy. And squared up our columns. And we can see the amounts where we can drill in rows or columns and start to see the amounts by date following the format of, this is just our category, so this is our on-screen trial balance. So we can see that, and that's how we make a simple report. Now we could, if we like this report, one of the things we do is, we can look at it and say, Uh, well, it doesn't quite fit on a page, right? So here's where, depends what we do, we can decide that these are less important if we want to collapse them, right? And you can expand and collapse and maybe go up maybe do a little bit different here. If we go up here, we could limit and expand or collapse, you know, collapse our inventory, collapse our fixed assets, and so on and so forth. When we're ready, we can take the overall result. I didn't get it quite on the page here. If I work a little bit here, maybe I could. And really, I'm making decisions about what's important and not. And I think we're pretty close. I think I'll just change that around and so thereabouts, right? That's the basic technique is you decide what's important or not by either filtering or just kind of manually doing that. When you're ready to lock it in, what you can do is go to the search. Um, uh, on this, um, on this, you can go to the visualization. You can go to the search, find the expand collapse, and turn them off. So now this is the new look and feel. If we wanted to, we could come over here and maybe take um, a format paint, right? This works in Power BI, which is nice. I think we have some scrolling over here to do. That changes around your format. And now if you like it and it fits, etc., I'm just going to sit make it, say that it does, then what you can do is you can go ahead and create a bookmark. So the bookmarks we saw in the when we're on the Power BI site came from here, and we get to them by the view bookmarks, and we just have what we want. We say bookmark add, and this is now my bookmark, my first report. And we can always come back to that from here. So that's a very simple report with a account category. Uh, with financial statements, it's not that much different. If we were to make another report, really the financial schedules have their own categories. So similar uh, to the built-in categories, the financial statement categories start at the top, drill down into different levels throughout the categories. So it's very similar. The columns dates work the same. Uh, there's one more thing that is a useful thing to do, which is to use uh, um, time comparison. So if we take a look at our income statement, we have make this a little bit bigger. So we have current fiscal period, same period, right? The basic variance math. So we don't have those in our fields, right? What we have is amount and budget and that sort of thing. But what we do have is we have fiscal period comparisons, which are set up as a secondary set of dimensions. And what they look like is this. So these dimensions by uh, setting a filter to them, and I'm going to need to close down some windows. We just don't have enough space here. These dimensions allow you to change the column output on the report. So you can do that sort of thing, or you can compare by year. So there's a set of primary dimensions and measures that are simple. There's a set of hierarchies that are used, and then there's a set of secondary time dimension that you can apply to the primary dimensions. So most of the report building for the main categories can be accomplished with that. If we take a look at our report, there are a few other elements here. Um, we see that, let me get rid of bookmarks and filters and take a look at our fields. And we can see that we have also information about the company, which allows us to put the company information up on top. We have the run date included there, which is the date that the report was calculated versus run. So that's an important little detail. And then there are some supporting report titles, which allows us to basically just change the reports dynamically with filters, the titles dynamically with filters. And that's what we use with the comparative versions. We're able to do that. So that's how you can create and use reports. Let's take a look at the model. The model overview comes from the modeling area of Power BI, and we can get there from transform data. Now, before we go into transform data, we're going to take a quick look at the model in the modeling tab here. And these are our main tables. So what we have the GL entries and the GL budget entries. These are the amounts where the primary numbers, amount, credit amount, debit amount, budget amount. That's where we keep them. These are our fact tables. Above those, we have GL accounts, which are our primary categorization, and we also have dates, and those affect them. We have dimensions because there are advanced dimensions in Business Central, and we use the dimensions to allow folks to see and set things like departments and customer groups. Categories are built on category indexes, and so those filter our GL accounts, and that's how our hierarchies interact with the GL accounts, and the same can be said for financial schedules. The rest of the information in the background here are really just load and other things. These are the active elements of the data model here. So let's go back into the transformation editor, and just have a quick look around here. All right. Don't be scared. All right. So Power BI can connect to Business Central over Odata connectors, which are based on web services, are published over web services. You can connect to those directly, or you can connect to them over Power BI data flows. You can connect to those directly, or you can connect over Power BI data flows. Power BI data flows take the data, include the data, so when they're calculated, they have a copy of the data. So they are a little bit faster and they work a little bit better. Our OData connectors here connect us to Business Central. We get this URL from the Business Central tenant. If we go to web services and we look that up, once we connect, we have a contents list, and this shows us the active pages and web queries in Business Central. In this case, we have set up our own for a couple of reasons. One, some of these, all queries are going to be read safe. Some pages are not. So if you don't know, find out, or create your own queries, right? So we use queries because it allows us to standardize a little bit better, makes it a little easier to do it next time. But we can connect over OData services, and this stuff is kind of as easy as, you click on this stuff and it opens up. It gives you an instance of that, which is what it's doing right now, connecting in, and then we would have, the WCI sales line as a table. So that's something we can do. All right. So the other kinds of connections that we can mock connections, and we have for a couple of things here. And then, we just set up parameters for this just to make it easy to administrate. We have a path and a file name, but they're just Excel files, and that's where you can keep things like report titles. The active connection that we're using in here are actually data flow connectors. And data flow connectors, in a limited way, are part of the Power BI professional licensing model. And the way they look in here is in this case, we have the Dynamics Con BC Financials demo, and those were created in the Power BI site, in the same site. And these are each one-for-one transaction uh, maps that just bring direct data from over the Power BI data flows that we would otherwise get from OData sources. And we do this because then you don't have to transfer the data all the time. It's more useful, and it's probably a good way to do multi-company. So that's what the data connectors look like. We also needed to use a couple of formulas here uh, to um, to create dates, because we have in a situation with fiscal dates, we need to be able to enter the beginning uh, first fiscal month, which we don't know until the product's installed and getting started. So with this, we can create dates, so we can set a start and end date in the first fiscal year. And when we invoke it, it just knocks out a new date table, which we can then use. The create financial schedule was a function we also found useful, and really all it does is creates a category, subcategory grouping, uh, and then we can set account range starts and ends over a sort with a sign and a row type, which probably sounds a lot like a financial statement. It's a little bit like that. So the uh, the rest of this, basically, we work through raw tables. We use a standard BI technique so that we don't have to deal with changes if the data sources are slightly different, it doesn't break our reports. So we go through a raw table area here, and then we transform into, not their category transformation, but we transform into these tables. And these tables largely are just, they're sourced off our transformations. And then we change around, the names, and we add a little account description over here. But mostly these are just flow through. If we open up the cash flow statement, we can see the different components: financing activities, operating activities, investing activities, change in value. Each one of these has accounts that are grouped to make that particular function happen. So it's all the accounts and indexes. And what we've done with this is we've pretty much just made that the account range function. If we take a look at how this is built, we can see this is operating activities. This is our category, subcategory, group, uh, sort, sign, and row type. So that's the technique here, and basically you just build these up as you go. Tree style takes a while, like account statements do, but that finishes it off with how you build your own financial statement with this. At least that's how we went about it. These are the things that we did, what we tried, and what we learned, and I hope that some of it is useful to you all. Remember, please, if you have questions, get them into the chat window. We are now going to go ahead and move to a live Q&A. So please ask questions, and I'll do my very best to answer you. Thanks again to Dynamics Con for this opportunity and a great event. Well, hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, we have some questions up here about filtering and some other kinds of things. We can go through those and talk about them. Roger, did you have any questions here that you particularly thought folks might be interested in?
Well, I was very interested in the categories and how you set the categories up with the subcategories. Those don't always sort well. So seeing that function and that part of it was super interesting to me. I have to steal your file so I can see how you did that.
Yeah, and what we did there was, there was really no magic about it. We just used a formula, a function in Power BI, and we've made a category, subcategory, and group. And those are pretty arbitrary. We gave it a sort and a sign so that we could reverse some of the transactions as we went. With that, we have little Lego block building kits that we just put, appended together when we were done. And that was really our whole technique.
Wonderful.
There's some questions about filtering, and there's a lot of options in Power BI for filtering. The most common ones are to take the elements from the field area and drop them into the filters area. And so you can do things like dates or any of your dimensions, any of the fields on the tables that you're looking at. And depending on what they are, they will allow you to change, allow users to change them on the fly.
Now, with the date filters, are you limited to just entering a date? I know you can do ranges with the slider boxes. Is it easy to do like everything before, everything after a certain date?
Yeah. Well, Power BI has it has a lot of date capability, and so out of the box, it's got calendar and date functionality. And so when we created a date formula, a date table, that's something that is very commonly done in Power BI. You create a function, and that instantiates a table. In that, you can have you can have hierarchies, so year, quarter, month, and you can also build that out to be fiscal, because the fiscal year may start off of calendar period. Once you have that in your report, then you can use that to drop into the filters area, and you can filter it by any of the hierarchical elements. You can also filter it relative, so you can say last month, last week, last year. And a lot of that is done on the filtering panel. You can also use date slicers. So that's a technique that allows you to click through dates. And then the final thing that people do a lot, and we did in the demo here, was expand hierarchies through dates. Right. Okay. So you have a date hierarchy and you drill down or through.
Wonderful. I see we have a question about consolidation. Do you want to address that?
Let me see if I can get there. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things about this that made it work was we really limited our scope. So there's a few key areas in there, right? When Power BI connects to a company in Business Central, so it does that over Power Query. And Power Query you can think of as a bag of connectors. Each connector, you've got Excel, you've got SQL, you've got Business Central, Azure SQL, text files, and each connector works a little bit differently. With the Business Central, we use the Business Central or Odata connector, and when we connect through over that, we get one company. So you can probably work around that with Power BI data flows and other things, but in our example, what kind of made it work is we limited the scope to a single company. We don't have consolidations or eliminations. We have very little transformation. And so that's part of the secret sauce that makes something like this work. There are lots of solutions that are far more mighty, and this is kind of a crossover between CPM, corporate performance, which approaches things in this way. And I'd say this is one grain on a beach of sand in terms of a CPM solution.
And there are also analytic solutions that Power BI is most known for, where you have dimensions, measures, and facts. And this again is kind of a no transformation, and that's why we thought it was okay for this situation. But if you get into heavier transformation, there's all kinds of tools from platform vendors in the space, but also from Microsoft in the Azure space with Azure SQL and Synapse Analytics and just loads of offers in those space. So in terms of consolidation, to make a short story long, no, we really stuck to just between here and here and here and here. And we think in that space, it works pretty good. But consolidating or bringing more stuff in or transforming or, dealing with historical stuff, probably inside of a report is not a good place to do that. So,
okay. So if you were going to do a consolidation, maybe using it with the data flow and consolidating everything up there before you brought it to a report would be the way to work that.
Yeah, there are absolutely, data estate platforms and tools from Microsoft and others that handle this stuff in a very good way. But with Power BI, if that's not the maturity of your situation or your need at the time, you might be able to carve off some pieces. It is an absolutely fantastic, killer tool. I think Power BI data flows are very interesting and something it's a transport from where you are to Gen 2 storage, and it's interesting stuff. So
yeah, the thing to remember about doing a consolidation is that everything that you do for one company, you'll have to do for all of them. It's not a one web service gets you all of the companies. So if you've got 6 different companies, you're setting up everything 6 different times, and then
that's right.
All of that data into one that you can look at in your report, right?
That's right. And then what happens is they're not always exactly everything the same. And that's where, that's where it becomes better to, work with professional grade tools and folks who do that for a living. And, they earn their living for a reason.
Yep. So it's possible to do your consolidation, but maybe not highly recommended.
Yeah. I wouldn't probably approach most companies that would need that would probably need a lot more, and you'd be left there, right? Today, it's about, when you make a solution, it's about who maintains it, right? Who's going to take care of that down the road? So patterns are free. You wouldn't get very far, copywriting a date table, or a pattern of that sort of thing. But they vendors that are out there have put mass amounts of effort into it, and that's what's batteried into their solutions. So, but Power BI is a great tool, absolutely. And the backup from Microsoft in Azure, will take you as far as you want to go into significant, and complete corporate, data estate management. One version of the truth and all the stuff that goes with it.
Wonderful.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Sorry about we got a little bit off audio and video track. I'm sure that was my fault. Let's see if we got any other questions here. Yeah, so there's a comment here about, talking about lightweight EDI, that's closer. These patterns, we chose, I don't even know if that's quite the right term, but we chose some patterns and we chose financial statements as a way to do it. But the same patterns are pretty useful in other areas. So Power BI is a useful tool. And what we really are doing there is just using dynamic functions to create indexes so that we can report on things, in a way that we could also use groups and other things in Power BI, but this is a little more portable and a little easier to hand to the next person.
There's a question about the variance columns.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's see can you tell me the question?
V2A report, there are variance columns in the data. Are the variance columns in the data, or did you create those through measures?
the primary fact tables are the GL entry and the GL budget entry. And what we're doing is we're summing the amount on that and credit or debit amount. They kind of, they work the same. And then with that, we create measures. So those measures we just created in the data model. And so the variance was budget, budget being the sum of the GL budget entries, amount being the sum of the GL entries. Then, under the filter of the budget, variance is budget minus amount, and, then percent is the calculation like that. So those are done in Power BI just by clicking on the measures button, and they're mostly quite simple measures. There's a second type of measure in there that I didn't show and should have, which is an external measure, and it's part of the Power BI external toolkit. And what you can do is create a secondary set of time intelligence. And in that space, you're actually using M rather than DAX, but you can use the same, it's very good to take time-based measures like last year, last period, last quarter, that you can then multiply times amount or budget, you can use to effect. So you get 2 layers of dimensionality for one, and that, it keeps what you're working with small, and it's a pattern that works, pretty well. So, and is supported by external data connection, external functions in the standard Power BI kit.
Wonderful. Did that answer your question, Christopher?
The other thing, what's the pros and cons between Power BI and Jet Reports? Okay, that one's loaded. Okay, so Jet Reports is Jet Reports is more than one thing. So Jet Reports has a Excel automation tool that is, I think it's fair to say, they really own that space, right? If you're working in Excel, Jet Reports is unique and amazing. Jet Analytics is a data warehouse automation tool, so that's a bit different. It's about one version of the truth and moving data and all the professional grade tools that go with that, right? So Power BI works with, with Excel, but more, they both share Power Query is a better way to think of it. Power Query I think of as a bag of connections, connectors. Each connector has its own ability to do things. Most are similar, but they do their thing. So an Excel connector would do this and that. So Power BI and Excel are close. Power BI is getting very tight with Gen 2 with the data flows. Power BI and Dataverse over in Teams is quite an interesting connection. But I think, Power BI isn't Excel, Jet isn't Power BI, the analytics or the reporting product. So I'd say apples and oranges is, useful as that is. So pros and cons though. Pros, Power BI, one of the things is you can set up some really nice reports and it's easy for people to click around. Right. Pros of Jet is if you're an Excel analyst, right, that maybe nothing else is going to, tickle your fancy like that. So there's some things that, Excel is such a powerful thing that you can, use a lot of that with Jet. So I'd say depends on where you want to work and what you're up to. Both are good options.
Yeah, I would say if you're going for a visual look and you like the charts and the graphs, to analyze and a little bit more of a choose your own adventure kind of analysis, that Power BI may be a little bit better tool. But if all you're really looking for is, hey, just give me the raw data so I can filter it and pivot it, to my heart's content, because you want to look at numbers and just the data part, that Jet may be a little bit better at that.
Yeah, and now we talk about Jet and we broaden right out. So let's talk about the other side of it, right? There's Jet Analytics and Jet reports, the Excel component. They're really dimensional. So they think in terms of dimensions and facts and measures and filters. Whereas more of a CPM bent product, right, is more about building up a provenance, is building up all those pieces that you need to prove that all your stuff is right. That's more corporate performance management. And so those type products are a little bit more in this exact space. But again, this is one pattern out of thousands and thousands and all the stuff that goes along with it. So, I don't call this CPM, and I don't really call it a data warehouse management, but it's a set of patterns.
We have another question about performance on big data, millions of records.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things we did, one of the things you have to be aware of, and I didn't really cover in here, is that when you're connecting to over OData, every connection, every refresh is doing a pull on that. And that can, start to affect your server. And that's why we talked about queries, because, there's a secondary reporting service, and we like the load balancer to move things across there to minimize that. So we use queries as a simple way to say how to kind of do that safely. But when we do that, every time we get a tug, right? And that's not the best. And so even in this, the whole size of the thing is limited to charts of accounts. All we're doing is building indexes, right? So they're very small. But even so, it starts to slow down over OData. So that's why we put Power data flows in there, right? Power BI data flows, which are made just the same way you would make the transformation in Power BI, and you can advanced edit, copy, paste. But they're made in the Power BI engine. And so what they do that's different is they copy the data. So in that respect, you can chunk up your data, you can keep historical stuff. Those represent Gen 2 storage behind the scenes, so they're a nice, safe place to do it. But you do, on cloud and that sort of thing, you have to watch your data and what you're doing. If the data gets big, then the technique changes to typically more event-driven, right? When data gets big enough, you cease to be able to haul it around, and you start to do things in a very different way. But for Power BI, for small mid data, you can bring it in. It makes you import it. It makes an imported space where you have an in-memory model. And then you can also, for larger data sets, you can connect make direct connections. And then that, for the right kinds of connections, they expose themselves directly. And then you can get the same kind of a performance you would expect on SQL Server analysis services or some other dimensional modeling.
Wonderful. Looks like we have one more question on the new Power BI Premium licensing, and specifically about Power BI Report Builder.
So Power BI Premium, Power BI, the most recent really announcement has been, some of the features in the Power BI Premium going into preview at a $20 per user rate. And so Power BI Premium is more than just the feature set. It also has, its own capacity. So it has, computers back there, and it's a little bit bigger than that. But it does allow some cases, and particularly even without the Power BI Premium, the Power BI Professional grade allows you to create data flows in a very simple set of patterns. You can't get very far out of it, enough to save data and then reference that data next. So it's a very interesting technology. That data is being saved, on the lake. It becomes available, as you start to use those paths. They're available to Synapse Analytics and machine learning. And so, I think today, more and more, folks have to think about whether the data should go to the lake first and then out. So the technology on the move, some of it is in preview right now, but it is for sure really interesting and exciting stuff that's changing every day. I think we're out of time here. So thank you, everybody. Is that right, Roger?
I believe so. Yeah, it does appear to be the top of the hour.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming to the show. We enjoyed the show. We're glad to be here. And if you reach out, and we'll get you some assets behind this and let you see the details for those of you who are, detail oriented. So thank you very much. And that's the end of the event. So breakout. Thanks.